8 days ago, a Catholic man was invited to speak at a commencement address at a Catholic university. The man who was invited was also the place kicker for the Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs. He said many things during his presentation, but one of them, which drew a lot of reaction from the people of America afterwards, was when he stated that his wife had accomplished a bunch in a business way, but then she stayed home, and he concluded his presentation by saying that he believed that the greatest way a woman could feel satisfied and complete was by being a homemaker. Well, that statement was immediately blown out of proportions and would immediately spread across the United States, that he said a woman's place is in the kitchen, and that they should not be out, and that they should not be getting college degrees. It kept exploding to the point that the city of Kansas City sent out a tweet intentionally letting the public know what that place kicker's home address is. In addition, there's a petition going out to get 50,000 signatures in hopes that 50,000 signatures would be enough to encourage the NFL to kick the kicker out of the NFL. Even the NFL commented that they themselves, the league, is very inclusive towards everybody, which is comical. They're not inclusive towards the one who spoke about this, but inclusive for everyone else. The hoopla just continues to get worse and worse. How would you feel if you had made some statements and people deceived others and slandered your words? It happens often, and that's the topic for our message today. So the message today is not about how would the place kicker or how should the place kicker respond to slander, but rather, how would you respond? Today we begin a new series of messages starting with Psalm 120. We're going to take this psalm and the next 14 in the next several weeks and look at these psalms and how they relate to our lives. Because it talks about different aspects of our life, the series will be entitled Psalms for Life's Journeys. Today the topic is on slander. It just so happens to cover a lot that's been going on in the news. So I'd like for us to look at Psalm 120 and do something different but extremely biblical as we start this message. Because the first part of the outline of the message is what I later understood to be the heading. I wrote in your notes the description. That would probably work, but a better title might be the heading. And if you look at Psalm 120, I want you to realize these first 4 words are just as much a part of the Bible as John 3:16. The 4 words in my translation are a song of ascents. For some of you, it's a song of degrees or pilgrim psalms. It's a bunch of phrases out there. Over the last several hundred years, scholars have tried their best to understand what does that phrase mean. And they really do believe in the last couple hundred years that it means the song of ascents. And here's the picture. If you look at a map, here's the Mediterranean Sea, here's Israel, here's the Jordan River. The Mediterranean Sea, you may not know this, is at sea level. But then the land rises up to a mountain range that runs north and south. And one mountaintop is Jerusalem. And then on the opposite side, and by the way, that is 2,500 feet above sea level. And then you drop to the other side to the Dead Sea, and you drop more than 3,000 feet to get down to the Dead Sea. So we have this peak here on this mountain range. And as people travel to Jerusalem, they don't usually go up and down the mountain range to get to Jerusalem, but rather travel on the low, flat areas to the west or to the east. And then when they travel to Jerusalem, they go up the mountain. Thus, they ascend. And it turns out that every Jew was encouraged to do this 3 times a year. To go to Jerusalem at Passover, and also at the tabernacles, and also during Pentecost. It was a worshipful time for them to go seek the Lord in Jerusalem. And as they ascended, they were encouraged to quote these 15 different psalms. So we're looking at the ascent psalms for the next several weeks and how they relate. And the hardest part, but something I want us to try our best to remember over these next few weeks, is that they were given as they were going to meet the Lord. It adds a whole new dimension to the understanding of the passage. I think it's interesting that when God spoke to Moses to speak to the people at Mount Sinai, they had just left Egypt. He said, one day you're going into the promised land. Listen to the words God said to Moses. I will drive out the nations before you and enlarge your borders. And no man shall covet your land when you go up 3 times a year to appear before the Lord your God. So even there was a statement on God's part, I want you to go to Jerusalem 3 times a year. Now for us today, it's easy for us to go to church, say once a week or even more often. But when you live a far distance away from Jerusalem, you can't go over there every week. You may have your synagogue, but you go to the holy place 3 times a week. And the reason is to turn your heart back to the Lord and see what He's done for you. You may remember when the nation of Israel was united and then split after Solomon. Rehoboam, who was Solomon's son, became the king of Judah. The northern kingdom separated itself, and they had a new king, Jeroboam. And Jeroboam quickly realized, you know what? We need to do something. We need to build some type of a church building, some worship center here in the north. Because if people go south, well, you listen to what he has to say. Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom will return to the house of David if this happens. If the people go up to offer sacrifices in the house of the Lord at Jerusalem, then the heart of this people will return to their Lord. So the whole purpose of the Ascent Psalms is to renew our relationship with God, to meet Him personally. And these songs were sung by the Jews. Some people even commented Jesus probably sang these songs with the others as they're going up the mountainside to Jerusalem. Well, that takes care of the first 4 words of the psalm. Let's go to the second major section. This is the desperate plea. In verse 1, we see, in my trouble, I cried to the Lord. Now, we'll find out in a few minutes that the problem is slander. And his response to slander is to go to the Lord. Now, be honest. What do most people do when they are slandered? Don't they pick up their cell phone and start calling people and saying, this is what happened to me? And then if they're good Christians, they add an extra phrase at the end. You need to pray about this situation. Well, why do we tell other people about the slander when we should go straight to the Lord? Listen to what Spurgeon has to say about that. It is of little use to appeal to our fellows on the matter of slander. For the more we stir in it, the more it spreads. It is of no avail to appeal to the honor of the slanderers, for they have none, and the most piteous demands for justice will only increase their malignity and encourage them to fresh insult. The point? Don't waste your time talking about other people, about slander. Don't go to the people who slandered you because they don't have enough maturity to change. Verse 1, I cried to the Lord. He's the only one who can change the situation. The next part of the verse, he says, and he answered me. You know, every time I see this phrase, I cried unto the Lord, I think of a song that we had to sing as teenagers. It was in a musical. In my distress, I cried to the Lord, and he saved me. So that immediately comes to my mind, and that's a totally different passage. But you notice in this passage, it does not say God saved me. It says he answered me. We think that when we cry out to God, that what he's going to do is completely end the problem. Just get rid of the other people, or stop it, or do something so that I can live a peaceful life. We'll find out just the opposite takes place. Oh, God did answer. He heard, and he is helping the man, the psalmist, in this passage. Then in verse 2, he finishes the specifics of the plea by saying, deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. That's what's taking place. That's what's bothering me. This slander. People are speaking evil of me. I don't like it. You know, other people have been slandered. Many people in the Bible. There was a guy named Joseph in the Bible who was sold into Egypt. He was slandered. And then we have statements like David. He was slandered a bunch. Let me read you one of the passages that he wrote. Because of all my adversaries, I have become a reproach, especially to my neighbors, and an object of dread to my acquaintances. Notice he's not talking about his enemies. It's those closest to him. Those who see me on the street flee from me. I am forgotten as a dead man, out of mind. I am like a broken vessel, for I've heard the slander of many. Terror is on every side. While they took counsel together against me, they schemed to take away my life. And it doesn't matter who you are. People who want to slander will do it to you no matter what. You can't stop it. Listen to the words of Jesus, who said, John the Baptist lived one way and they slandered him. I lived just the opposite to make the people happy, and they still slandered me. Listen to these words. Jesus said, for John the Baptist has come eating no bread and drinking no wine, and you religious leaders say he has a demon. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you see, behold, a gluttonous man and a drunkard, a friend of the collectors, tax collectors, and sinners. So it doesn't matter what you do, the slander is going to come. But notice the focus again. He's crying out to the Lord. He has that perspective right, for only the Lord can help. Then we go to the next major section, which is the desired vindication. The desired vindication. This is in the heart of the author of this psalm. God, this is what I want you to do. Do you see it? What shall be given to you? And what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? You see his emotions are brewing here. He said, sharp arrows of the warrior and burning coals of the broom tree. I mean, kill them and burn them up. Sharp arrows to kill them. And one of the types of wood that produced one of the hottest coals was that wood of a broom tree. So we have a guy here who's coming up with vicious ways to attack. Now, maybe you women would never think this, but sometimes when men get a little upset and angry and we want to fight, we're thinking of all these incredible moves of judo and karate and Bruce Lee and attacking them, or maybe, according to this guy, using the most vicious weapons of all to attack somebody. How do you respond when someone slanders you? Do you want to get even? Do you want to start attacking? It's not the way to do it. I find it interesting that the order of the psalm is almost the opposite way that I would have written it. I would have said, I've been slandered and I want to get even, and it didn't work, so I finally cried out to the Lord. But if you notice, it's starting off with I cried out to the Lord, this is what they did to me, and something's going on, which we'll explain in a moment. But you'll never accomplish anything with fighting. Romans 12 says, be not overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. If you use hate to put away hate, you will never accomplish that. Martin Luther King even said that years ago. You can't remove hate with hate, only by using love. So don't fight fires with fire. Let's go on to the next area, the fourth part of the outline. In the final 3 verses, he shares the daily struggle. He says, woe is me, for I sojourn in Meshech, for I dwell among the tents of Kedar. I want you to know that Meshech is like 100 miles north of Israel. Kedar is a long distance south of Israel. So when he says, I sojourn and I dwell among the tents, it's not so much that he's physically in 2 extreme places at the same time. Remember what's going on. They're walking up the mountain. I personally believe he's saying as they travel from the west or from the east, they're getting attacked from the north and from the south. Keep your focus on the Lord. Keep going straight. I see this illustrated in the book or movie, the only way I can read a book, called Pilgrim's Progress. And as Christian is going towards this building, there is this long path, this long walkway before getting to the building. And at the closest end of that path, there are pedestals on the start of the path. And on the top of each pedestal are lions, ready to grab him and devour him as he walks down the path. But he realizes as he focuses on the Lord and keeps going straight, the lions are reaching as far as they can to get him and not able to. Yet they try. So he stays focused to go down the middle while he's being attacked from the left and from the right. And I believe the same is true here. When you seek the Lord, Satan doesn't want it to take place. He will do anything to stop your desire for the Lord. Interruptions will take place. People will call up. People will get upset. People will yell at you to distract you. But the focus is staying on the path to seek the Lord. Let's pick up with verse 6. Too long has my soul had its dwelling with those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. He wants so much for his life to be full of peace, but all these antagonizers are slandering him, making up stuff, causing other people to hate him, and he's just trying to be a good person and obey the Lord. Well, that's the message and the passage, but I would like to go now to the application of this. How do we read this and now apply it to our life? And the first thing is to seek the Lord primarily. That is the primary point. That was the first thing we read at the very top. A song of ascents. When you are seeking the Lord, keep that as your focus. The next thing is to know that the Lord is sovereign. We're not worshiping the Lord because it's what we have to do, but He truly is God of the whole universe. I confess this past week I'm hearing so much negativity through the media, obviously filtered by the media to make sure they're pulling out the harshest words possible because of that kicker's commencement address. Let me give you the title of one of the articles. Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker bashes Pride Month, tells women to stay in the kitchen. I mean, this is all I'm hearing and all of the anger that's arising. But isn't God still in control? Then all of a sudden I started seeing other articles, like the Attorney General for the state of Kansas City saying, the city has no right to start spreading that man's address. I'll do whatever I can to stop this nonsense. The owner of the Kansas City Chiefs is Mr. Hunt. His wife let it be known in public. She thought it was a great speech. I mean, what a slap in the face for all those who are trying to help. So God is still on the throne, and we have to keep our focus no matter what happens. And it's going to get worse for Christians in the next many years. As I see some of the comments that people make, it's like overwhelming. People agree with his comments that we should have a priority for family and to live by God's standards. That's about all he said. And people are agreeing with that. It does exist, but if you take your focus off of God and start listening to the media, you're going to go downhill. The purpose is to go uphill, to seek the Lord. Know that the Lord is sovereign. In my Bible reading just a week ago, I came across this passage. I was finishing the book of John. Jesus is just about to be arrested, just hours later. And as he's talking to his apostles, he said these words, "These things I have spoken to you so that in me you may have peace." I mean, the whole world is going to go ballistic and crazy and chaotic and be filled with anger. And Jesus saying, come to me and you'll still have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world. We have to remember that constantly. Get our focus off of the media, off of the posts and all of these social statements that are going out. Keep your focus on the Lord. And then the third part, just go ahead and anticipate the slander to come. And when it does, you can go, oh yeah, God said it would come. Don't be shocked. Don't be surprised. You thought you've been building your whole life to accomplish this one feat. And just before slander takes place, can you imagine you're trying to be the first one to win the next golf tournament and be the first person to do like 3 or 4 in a row, and all of a sudden the police are arresting you before your day in golf and put you in jail, and you're thinking, what's going on? That's the way your life will be at times. When you live for the Lord and you think, why are people all of a sudden slandering me? And as you see from your Sunday morning Bible study, God is in control. He knows what's going on, and he's allowing all this evil to advance his good. He just doesn't tell us ahead of time. The fourth matter is to focus on eternal matters. I also read this, as you would expect, since it's at the end of John. I read this week, where Jesus is arrested. He's standing in front of Pilate, who was the most powerful man for that area. And if he says, crucify someone, it had to be done. If he said, set someone free, he had the power. And there he was in his pompous attitude, without realizing he's talking to the God of the whole universe in front of him. And he said, don't you realize I have the power to stop this crucifixion? Pilate answered, am I not a Jew? Am I? Your own nation and the chief priest delivered you to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting. But isn't that how our attitude is, humanly speaking? If we're not in tune with the Lord, someone slanders us, we need to get on the cell phone and tell people how bad those people are. We need to be angry. We need to fill out petitions. In God's world, fighting on earth does not exist as we perceive it. God has something far greater taking place when we are slandered. And it reminds me of the passage in 2 Corinthians in which God said, the weapons of our warfare are not carnal. In other words, you're not going to win anything with guns and swords and If I just use profanity, I can win this argument. No, you won't. If I can just show I'm angry, it won't win anything. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, casting down imaginations, and every high thing that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. Which leads us to the last point. Part 5 for application is use this emotional pain to expose your embraced lies. This has been stated many times over the years. Nothing anybody says will ever harm you. No one can abuse you and produce permanent damage to your emotions. That's impossible. When I was a kid, we all heard this phrase, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. And I've heard sermons and read books, and they say, oh, how untrue that is. And now I've come to an even deeper understanding. It is a true statement. The words of other people will never, ever hurt you. What hurts you is what you wrap around those words and believe. And it's easy to prove. If you verbally abuse a deaf person behind their back, you told them, it didn't affect them one bit. They're deaf. It's not what you say, it's what they believe. Now let's go back to the topic. What's going on here? The psalmist is being slandered. Do you know why God allows that? To expose hurts that are deep down inside our own hearts, and he's trying to expose them so that we will deal with it. And our human side says, no, just cover it up, God. I just don't want to deal with my past hurts anymore. I don't want to deal with these lies. It's too painful. And God says, wait a minute, didn't you just say in verse 1 that you cried out to me to get rid of this pain? You're not going to get rid of it until you deal with it and resolve the lie that's attached to it. Let's say I make some awful statement like, you shouldn't do scuba diving upside down. You've never done that, like I've never done that. You'd go, what kind of a remark was that? It doesn't make any sense. But if your close relative died from a scuba diving accident, oh, it's obvious that man just said that my relative was an idiot and didn't do what was right. And it's obvious he's also including that everyone in my family is just as much of an idiot. I can't believe he would make such a statement. And you go, wait a minute. If you're not a part of that, it's easy to see the situation. But when people slander you, you are exposing to yourself and to the world your sore spots you've never resolved. So what if they walk up to you and say, you're a 50-foot telephone pole. You're a mean person. If it's not true, you can take it. And the words will not hurt you at all. But if you already believe that you're disgusting, that you're worthless, you're a piece of trash, then when they say something that exposes that, whew, I think that's the real reason why Psalm 120 is written in a order. God, please get rid of my hurts. And then what happens? God allows even more hurts to take place to expose his inner hurts. And when we resolve those, we can be at peace and be just like Jesus, especially when some person says, I have all the power in the world to do this, and you're thinking, who are you? My Heavenly Father owns everything and is in complete control. I'm not the slightest bit worried. Oh, God is in complete control. Listen to this passage. No temptation has overtaken you, but such as is common to man. And God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able. Here it is. Here's the strong point. But he will, with the temptation, provide the way of escape. The way of escape is not going around the temptation. It's in the temptation that we finally realize, oh, I never resolved that issue when I thought I was just a piece of trash. God, you did that wonderful thing for me on the cross. I am totally loved by you. I'm at peace and calm in my heart. It was in the temptation, in the slander, that we were able to find victory in our life. Truth be told, nobody can make you angry. If you become angry, you do so by choice. If slander bothers you, it is a wonderful act of God to show you, oh, let's take another moment to expose another area of your life so that you can be more like Christ. And then when we see the change, this is wonderful. It's so wonderful to be set free from another issue. Again, let's take the whole summary. What's going on? Psalm 120. I'm trying to seek the Lord. I'm trying to draw close to Him. I'm getting all these attacks to distract me from the Lord. And God allows them to expose areas that are keeping me from enjoying Him in a greater way. God will answer our prayers. Slander is evil on the part of the ones who dish it out. But for those of us who receive it, it can be a blessing, an instrument of God to show us ways we can be more like Christ. Would you bow your heads for prayer? Many of you have studied the life of Joseph being sold into Egypt. And when he had a chance to retaliate against his brothers, his response was, you did it for evil, but God did it for good, to restore our family, to preserve our nation. And when offenses come to you, God is just as much sovereign in your life as He was in Joseph's and in the life of the psalmist. Would you thank the Lord right now? And would you also, don't pray for slander to take place, it'll come. But would you right now say that you will choose not to respond with anger or upset or violent responses, but rather you will focus on loving the other person and seeking ways in your heart to find peace. Our Father, you are wonderful. You are gracious to us. You are patient with us. Thank you for not dishing out to us what we often wish we could dish out to others who offend us. You are patient. You are kind. You are amazing. And I ask that you would have more of your character to be within us as we see life from your perspective. May the world see you and be drawn to you as well. May we see many people become Christians this week. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.